Hello, everyone. How are you?
Good. And you?
Doing great. My name is Mike Dando. I am the moderator for this wonderful panel. Welcome. We'll take some time today. We'll go through these wonderful presentations, and hopefully we'll have some time to talk. We'll be starting. You'll see the order of presentations today. From so we'll start with Vanessa. We'll start with the Indigenous algorithmic art. Then we'll move to learning technology learning in groups, FabLearn Dialogues, ASTROEM Project, and filmmaking and bearing witness. Thank you again for joining us. And to make sure everybody has enough time, we will start with Vanessa and Miriam. Are you ready to go?
Yes, I'm here. Can you listen to me?
Yes. Oh, we can hear you just fine.
Oh, that's great. Okay, should I start? Okay, so
yes, go right ahead.
Okay, I'm Vanessa Rosa, and I'm a visual artist and researcher. I've developed this project with Miriam Takahace and the team of Colégio Magno. It's a private school in São Paulo. So I'm gonna do most of the speaking. I think Miriam's with us, isn't she? Miriam, você tá com a gente?
Sim.
Yes. Oh, okay, so she's here. So Miriam doesn't speak English much, so I'll do most of the talking and she'll do 1 minute at the end. She was the one really doing the educational program with the students. I was the artist who developed the project with the Indigenous. So I'll start like from the basics. Next slide. So pretty much, I've been studying ethnomathematics for a while. It's a long story of how I got there. I work a lot with street art, and I've worked with different communities in Brazil, like favelas and NGOs. But then I entered ethnomathematics first for my interest in digital fabrication. I started doing laser cut stencils, and then I started studying algorithm art throughout different cultures. And ethnomathematics is a great reference frame for that, because we have this tradition. Like, it started with a Brazilian in the 70s who was wondering how we could develop other kinds of educational methods that were not just following this standardization of educational methods coming from the West and just using the same things everywhere, and trying to see what local traditions could give us insights into different ways of learning math. So the researcher I admire the most in this group is Paulo Guedes. So he spent a long time like researching the traditions within Mozambique and how people would do like patterns over sand and do storytelling. And they were actually doing geometric algorithms. So they were like highly precise, and there was a method of teaching it within the village. And only a few people were initiated. There was also a complexity that would grow from time to time, like from who was allowed at this kind of sacred knowledge. Often it was seen as a sacred activity, or it was like women's handcraft. But anyway, so that's a gigantic topic of its own. What is ethnomathematics? So I can't stay long explaining. Pretty much what did anyone say something? Okay, I'll keep going. So pretty much what I did, next slide, was I started adapting some geometric algorithms from different cultures into laser cutting. I started with Portuguese tiles, and then I went into Islamic architecture. And because of this work, I was introduced to some indigenous leaders in Brazil, because geometric art is one of the most sacred arts for most of the indigenous groups in Brazil. So there are a bunch of different traditions. Each one is very particular. And I was introduced to a shaman called Sama Putumi, which I'll introduce shortly, and show a bit of what we developed together. So the educator's work that I'm going to present now is an encounter between me and school in São Paulo, and the whole point is that there is a law in Brazil that that makes it mandatory to teach indigenous cultures in school, like to talk about indigenous cultures in school. But the issue is we have over 300 indigenous ethnic groups in Brazil, and we have very few educational methods about how to talk about these cultures. And often, like, it becomes kind of this stereotype, and like people just reinforce the idea that it's only something to teach little kids, or that's not the kind of knowledge that can be brought into other disciplines like mathematics or digital fabrication or innovation. So when I present my work to them, and I was also showing some methods like from ethnomathematics or what more recent researchers have been developing recently, like have been developing in the US nowadays, like Ron English, who studies African fractals and who worked with cultural situated design tools. Anyway, I was showing different methodologies, and they decided to go from Snap, which is kind of like Scratch, and develop activities with the students. So next slide, please. Yeah, so that's about the law, which I just mentioned. The next slide shows Saman Putumi. So when I met Saman, I brought her to a digital fabrication laboratory. I showed her how laser cutting worked and what we could do with it. She got very excited, so that's something particular to her group as well. They are much more open to new technologies, and they've several people within her ethnic group are already known for collaborating with artists. So next slide. That was in the Amazon. I spent 1 month living with her. And one of the things I did was to bring laser cut stencils with the patterns she had drawn for me. And here she's using an air compressor with a traditional pigment called genipapo. Next slide. And they were testing how to do like body paintings in a faster way with the stencils. But next slide. We also use it for contemporary art, like we were doing photography with, this is a sunlight over people's faces. So we were playing around with their tradition of making geometric patterns over bodies, but also like it's an important part of their culture, the idea that everything in the world is made out of patterns. And making this, like when you take ayahuasca, you see patterns in everything. So we were trying to see like how could we put this into, like how could we use recent technologies and play around with these ideas. So next slide. This is a photo of an installation we've done in a museum in São Paulo. So this is a painting that I've done in collaboration with her. She's the person in the middle of this image. So it's again, like always this point of patterns as this underlying logic of nature, and she like posing, looking at us in front. So she sent me the picture reference for this work, and she also like chose all the patterns that we use for the painting. The installation is a little bit different from that. It's projection mapping over painting, but that gives an idea. So next slide. So here is the educational encounter we did in the school in São Paulo. There were people also from the public school network from Guarulhos, which is a nearby city council. And I pretty much presented my work. Next slide. I showed them how to do the laser cut stencils and use spray painting. Next slide. And then Miriam developed with the students on the use of Snap. And then pretty much what happened is the art teacher had to explain to the students like how the indigenous patterns were made, and also what kind of symbols that came into it and how it's different from culture to culture. So they made like a little bit of research to introduce to the students the general concepts, and then the students in another class, which was Miriam class, they started learning bases of computation by trying to describe patterns of their own. So they were trying to create it. Next slide. Then they made it. They made the laser cut stencils, and they used that for several different activities within the art class. Next slide. Which was like fabric, paintings, and one more. which is t-shirts. So now Miriam's going to talk for 1 minute, and later on we'll open to questions. Sorry, it has to be so fast. Miriam, você consegue me ouvir?
Hi, sim.
Sua vez.
This project was of a great value for us to perceive the importance of diversity, of rescuing ancient cultures, learning about different ethnicities and their customs. The main learning is that we can use the program language to approach anything. However simple, the technology employs developing logical thinking and problem solving in the new generation is the beginning of learning, because it is enough to know how to use the technology, we need to know how to build it.
Thanks.
Awesome. So I guess we did it 10 minutes, right? Or 9 minutes.
That's so amazing, so wonderful. Thank you so much. Wow, just I'm so inspired already. And we'll have a chance for people to ask questions and such at the end, but I do want to make sure we get to everybody. So up next we've got technology learning groups in the Bedouin sector.
Hi. So, hi everyone. It's really exciting for me to be here today. And my name is Dvir Warshavsky. I live in Yerucham, a small town in the Negev Desert, which is in the southern periphery of Israel. 5 years ago, I had a phone call from the CEO of Science Center of Yerucham. Basically, this center is trying to change the opportunity map of youth in the Negev that in general suffered from a low socioeconomic level. The center is trying to provide them with more options of socioeconomic mobility through science and technology education. And that's basically. So the CEO told me that he heard that I learned some Arabic, which is true, and he already knew that I have some educational experience. And he asked me to open technology learning groups in the Bedouin communities around our town. Can you go next slide, please? Thank you. Now, the Bedouins are a group of nomadic tribes who have lived in Israel's Negev desert for hundreds of years, tracing their heritage back to the traders on the ancient spice road, which actually crossed our desert. So I had no idea how to start a project like that. But after a few days, I decided I'm gonna take this challenge. And I can say it was challenging, really challenging, but also really fun and fascinating. Next slide. Thank you. So in the past 5 years, I was coordinating technology and robotics learning groups for learners from the Bedouin tribes. The activities took place within the formal and also informal institutions of the Bedouin tribes around my town, especially Masoudin al-Azazme tribe. This tribe is actually the biggest, one of the biggest tribes in the Negev desert. And it's known as a relatively, let's say, conservative tribe that still preserves its ancient cultural traditions. So the students are still part of this unique cultural tradition that in the past integrated with a semi-nomad culture. Today, most of them are not really semi-nomads, but they still live in a temporary housing with no official connection for water and electricity, and actually without any other elementary services. So in the past year, I was running about 8 different learning groups with about 10 students each. And the activities took place in several places, in the Bedouin kindergarten, Rahama, in the regional elementary school of El Azazme tribe, in a few Bedouin high schools, and also in some private hosting tents called in the Bedouin dialect Shig. So in the picture, you can see a making activity in the Shig of Badrani family. So I can say that until today, more than 300 students between the ages 4 to 18 took part in those learning groups. Next slide. Great. During the project, the learning groups are exposed to a variety of platforms and programs, from interactive programming platforms that I guess you know, like Arduino, App Inventor, and Lego Mindstorms, and things like that, to maybe more freestyle things like creating electronic versions of traditional instruments somewhere in the middle of the desert, like the one you can see in the picture. Actually, there we were doing like a cover for a very famous love song, Bedouin love song called Marsul El Khub. And also sometimes some of the groups are taking part in events like robotics festivals of FIRST, and also hackathons of making and product development. Next slide. So I think I can point on two main characteristics of this project. One important feature of this project is that the technological world is perceived as an opportunity to improve students' immediate living environment. So I actually felt that anchoring the learning experience in the context of an immediate personal daily experience makes the learning much more meaningful, broad, enriching, and it may sound paradoxical, but I think also much more surprising. The learning experience became a way to rediscover the immediate living environment and connect the learning to real life. For example, last year, the main theme of FIRST LEGO League was the space. And when I asked students about how space impacts their life, they immediately thought about the sun as an energy resource. Very quickly, they found themselves in intensive research on solar panels, which is, I have to say, the main way to generate electricity in the unrecognized Bedouin village. They have no official infrastructures, so they have to build things like that. In another case, when the yearly FLL theme was urban planning, the students started to deepen into the complex issue of planning problems, which relate deeply to the unrecognized village's current situation. Students were thinking together on a variety of innovative solutions for maybe the most critical planning problems in their village. So in the picture, you can see a mental map of the village Wadi Nam that the students did during one of these projects. So instead of creating learning experience as a sterile atmosphere of theoretical knowledge, it was important to me to make it an opportunity to deepen the understanding of the immediate living situation without ignoring the cultural, political, and social context, although this could be much more sensitive and complex. Next slide. Great. Another aspect that makes this project unique is that it involves a wider community circles. The project is an essential bridge between Jews and Bedouin children that actually are part of the same district. For example, every week before the coronavirus came to visit us, there were a few robotics team members from Yerucham, Jewish, that took part in making activities in the Bedouin village, Rahama. And for those Jewish students, this was the first time they ever met with life in the Bedouin village 10 minutes away from their hometown. So in the picture, you can see Bedouin and Jewish students programming drones together. So we can see that this project have a positive impact on the situation in a wider communal circles. So in conclusion, I can say that the students who participate in the project get a deeper and richer connection to the world around them. They also get the perception that there's a variety of areas of knowledge which is relevant to their lives. I can see also an increase of, I can say, self-confidence of the students. I mean that they are not looking at science and technology as a foreign and threatening field, but more like a friendly area that can be closely examined without fear. Next slide. So it's important for me to say that although it's very specific and unique society and culture, I believe that actually every learning group has its communal, social, and cultural background. That what can be learned is not to look at these aspects as background noises, but more as a fertile soil for connections between the learning and the daily life experiences of the students. So I'm really excited that I have the opportunity to share all of this with you, and thanks everyone.
Just absolutely fantastic. Really, thank you so much for sharing that. So much to talk about, so many interesting things happening in that project as well. We will, again, in the interest of time, continue on with FabLearn Dialogues, a pilot for transnational maker education exchange.
Hello, everybody. My name is Maarten Hennekes from the Netherlands. I'm a teacher at Teachers College in Arnhem, in the eastern part of the Netherlands. And together with our local school boards, we investigate how we can give shape to maker education within the curriculum. And I will present this paper together with Peter Troxler. Hi, Peter. And he is our visiting lecturer, and he is from the Rotterdam University. The FabLearn Dialogues was a pilot that brought the Dutch and Danish maker education community together with the aim of learning with and from each other. It was organized by the Dutch Hanne University and the Danish FabLab at school. 150 makers from all sections of maker education took part. Next slide. In the spring of 2018, we made a study trip to the FabLab at school Denmark with a mixed group consisting of teachers, teacher educators, researchers, school directors, school administrators, and government officials. This with the intention of thinking together about how maker education in our region can further contribute to school development. Next. FabLab at school organized a fantastic, inspiring week with many hands-on, minds-on, hearts-on activities and meetings with our Danish colleagues. FabLab at school is a maker education community in Denmark, providing research-based innovative education to primary and secondary schools and teacher education. Next. In fall 2019, the Danish partners paid a return visit. To facilitate mutual learning and exchange, we organized a 3-day program, the FabLearn Dialogues. On day 1, the 75 Danish participants visited best practices in the field of maker education in the Netherlands, under the guidance of students from our Teachers College. In this photo, you can see the visit to the Timmerhuis, a youth workplace in a disadvantaged neighborhood. The Timmerhuis is a place where children can build, try, investigate, fail, and complete. They experience successes and failures and learn to cope with this. But above all, the children learn to work together and have fun together. Next. On day 2, the Danish and Dutch maker education community met in a conference setting. The conference was opened with a dialogue on maker education. It has been argued that the national curriculum for maker education would give every student access to maker education, however, that it must remain dynamic and must not suffer from bureaucracy. Designating one specific day of the week to project work was suggested. Next. In the morning, the participants followed workshops organized by the Dutch and Danish maker education community. For the afternoon program, individual participants could propose questions, wishes, challenges, or problems in an open space setting. Groups were formed and moved to workspaces that had been equipped with basic workshop materials. The Danish design model was used to search for possible solutions that were given shape in artifacts. Paulo Blickstein reflected on the day, emphasizing the importance of free space within the curriculum so maker education can get a place within the curriculum of the school without losing its own nature. Next. On day 3, the Danish participants, under the guidance of a student, visited 10 Arnhem schools and other maker education initiatives. They went by bicycle to the various locations. Next. The photo shows the Pieter Breukels School. This girl explains how they have been practicing maker education all week. Next.
And that's over to me. Thank you, Maarten. So what did we learn from this exercise, really? And I'm gonna put that into 4 points. We had the exchange participants who learned something. We had students from the Hanne University who were following the exchange. What did they learn? We think that the broad community could learn something from what we've been doing. And obviously we ourselves learned something from organizing this quite massive event. So let me start with what the exchange participants learned from it. And that immediately links back to my 4th point, obviously. I mean, the Dutch were invited to come to the Netherlands and experience the Dutch approach to maker education. And I think the most important factor in there, and that's what this session is essentially about, is the different way that different cultures adopt making into their culture. And it seems that like some approaches, particularly the Dutch culture of just go and do it, resonates quite differently with the Danish culture that is much more prescriptive, but also much more reflective on what they're doing. So from the Dutch delegation, we got an enormous list of stuff they learned, like being explicit about the purpose of the exchange, designing workshops with your target group in mind, the importance of facilitation, the importance of being explicit of what you expect from a workshop, the idea of hands-on, minds-on, the idea of a student-centered approach, the idea really of not just goal-oriented, achievement-oriented approaches, as we heard earlier in this conference. So to bring back in the notion of play. And funny thing, you know, for the Dutch students, maybe you can switch to the next picture now. For the Dutch students, this was also kind of recognizing, oh yeah, I mean, these were all students who want to become teachers, right? So for them to recognize, you can't let loose and you can't let kids take the leading part in a maker lesson. I think that was their main sort of ingredient of their learning, which I think is quite important for beginning teachers. Next slide, please. The broader community. I think that the most important part in there is to cross those borders and to start to exchange how we from different cultures think differently about making, which on the first sight might look like, oh, this is one standard thing. No, it's not. It's making is very uncultured, and it's our duty as teachers and researchers to translate literally and figuratively making into the cultures we come from. And finally, next slide, please. What we've learned from this conference, and this was a high energy conference with stuff going on all the time. maybe sometimes less could be more, and we might want to allocate more time to reflection. Maarten.
Thank you, Peter. The exchange brought together a community of creative people, free thinkers, and real professionals who are willing to work on the basis of reciprocity. The participants were passionate, eager to share their stories, and willing and able to listen to each other. An event such as the FabLearn Dialogues can provide a very positive and safe atmosphere in which people can learn together from each other's pride, inspiration, and pleasure. So we really hope next year we can meet, for example, our Danish colleagues again, and otherwise we will figure out a way to make this possible online. Thanks a lot for listening and to our presentation.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. What an incredible and important reminder that that making is encultured, right? And that we cannot allow or afford. We have to understand that kits are not the goal, the point. We have to revel in learning. It's such an important point. Thank you both so much for that presentation. We'll continue on. Again, I want to make sure we're being mindful of time. So we will now bring it to the ASTROEM Project.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Perfect. So let's start. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gabriel. I'm from São Paulo, Brazil, and I'm here to represent all at the ASTROEM Project and the University of ABC. Next slide, please. So these will be our topics. Next slide, please. So first of all, who we are. Next slide, please. The ASTROEM Project was created in 2013. The project developed by the Federal University of ABC aims to contribute to scientific dissemination and popularization of science. Moreover, we work to engage the girls to enter the scientific area using the STEM methodology and maker culture, as students build artifacts for experimental activities and create science projects. Next one, please. So in this work, we will show you a few of these experimental activities and how we have been encouraged girls to engage in science. Next one, please. Now about our subjects. Next one. Our project is divided in 4 subjects with the STEM approach. So we teach astronautics, aeronautics, astronomy, and applied mechanics. Next one, please. We divide our classes in 2 parts. First one, the theoretical classes, that besides only presenting the subjects, we try to stimulate the students' participation with a lot of interaction between themselves. Next one, please. And the second one, the experimental activities. So after a few hours of theoretical class, they can finally get their hands dirty with a maker approach and low-cost materials. The idea here is that they can assimilate the knowledge with simple things of their daily activities. Next one, please. This is just one example of the experiment, the hydraulic elevator. Year by year, we try to always change the experiments. Because of that, some students even make the course more than once just to make the new experiments. Next one, please. So here are some examples of the interdisciplinary perspective. Even working with exact science, we try to reach subjects like geography and history, giving to students a complete approach of the topics. Next one, please. So now about the experiments. Next one. So here's some examples of the STEM approach in our project. Next one, please. The bottle rocket is an amazing example of a low-cost experiment. We can use it to teach physics and chemistry. Next one, please. This celestial planisphere is a few minutes. In a few minutes, the student may have another idea about the sky above them. Next one, please. Last but not least, the LEGO NXT. Here we can show the student a whole new perspective about robotics. because most part of them never had contact with this subject. We stimulate their computational thinking, and they can see with their own eyes the result of their codex. Next one, please. Through the course, we take the students to so many different visits, so they can have another perspective of science, not just inside the class, but around the city. It's one moment really unique to them. Next one, please. Okay, now about the girls. Next one. We have made some change in our projects. So we have 13% of quotas to girls, and our classes have been modified. Everyone already knows Newton and Einstein, but they also need to know Marie Curie, Katherine Johnson, and Christina Koch. So in our class, the students learn about them and so many other women because of the difference they made in history of humanity. Besides that, the woman in our team also presents paper like this one in other events. Next one, please. So here we have the graphics about the participation of the girls in our project. How you see in this graphic and the other, the numbers of the girls always follow the numbers of the students. In the last years, at least half of our students were women. Next slide, please. So you can see how it follows. Next slide. Yes. So science make difference in our society, or it's supposed to, and we must make this real. It's our responsibility. Next one, please. So last year for this paper, we did a research with girls. We asked them if our activities help their engagement in science, and 88% said yes. When we asked them if the activities helped to combat the gender gap, 100% said yes. Next one, please. So we made another questions to them. We asked them if they felt represented. We asked them if they felt represented, if they felt an incentive for gender equality, and here you can see the answers. I read just one of them. Yet the participation of women in science is very important today, and many monitors encouraged and treated the girls of the ASTROEM very well, and there was equality. From what I realized, they did not act with a difference in the treatment of boys and girls. Next one, please. Okay, we asked the girls what they think about the role of women in science after participating in the project. And here's some answers. My view has changed because now I feel a little more secure to be part of this environment, knowing that a lot will depend on me and in many situations. Before, I thought it would be much more difficult because of the stigmas I learned at school about the role of each gender. Next one, please. And we asked her too about how they felt encouraged to continue acting in the role of science, and here's some answers of they. Next one, please. Okay, so this is part of our team, our coordinators and monitors. The most part of they are women. And next one, please. So, how I said before, it's our responsibility. We cannot just wait for the government. We need to make changes, and we need to make them now. So now these girls of ASTROEM want to continue in the scientific area. And besides that, we are contributing to the social and intellectual inclusion, since many students who participate in the project are in social vulnerability. Science is not just about numbers and laws. It's about people, and people can change the world. Next one, please. So we are science, we are technology, we are education, and sometimes we even try to be hope. This is who we are. We are ASTROEM. Next one, please. So I'd like to thank Claudia Celeste, Claudia Lozada, and Wesley GÓis for this opportunity, and now the ASTROEM team to make this happen. So it is. Thank you very much.
Absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much. I mean, and what an important message, this notion of science is not numbers, it's people, right?
Yes.
And to not lose, as the saying goes, not to lose the forest for the trees, to have the big picture in mind. Lovely and just absolutely wonderful. And as we continue on, again, we'll hopefully have a little bit of time to talk, but I do want to make sure that we get some, that we have enough time for everyone to talk. So we're filmmaking and bearing witness will be our will be our next, and hopefully we'll have a chance to build a little bit together.
Great. So my name's Tarrence Banks. My partner Scott couldn't be here today, but I'm going to talk to you about a filmmaking project that we did last school year. Next slide. So we're from the project school that's in Bloomington, Indiana. We're a K through 8 public charter school, about 350 students in downtown Bloomington, which is where Indiana University is. We have a project-based focus called P3, which is project, problem, and place-based learning. Next slide. Over the last 8 years, we've developed a fully integrated maker-centered design-forward curriculum that sort of hinges on year-long projects that engage kids in pretty intense cooperative learning with just a focus on design, user-centered design that's connected to community. Next slide. So this year's project of the filmmaking documentary project, the overall design problem was a 10-minute documentary that was place-based, so focused in our community on real problems and solutions that could also have some global impact. So we ended up with 16 documentary films by student groups that were anywhere from 4 to 6 students, and a couple of individual students who created their own additional documentaries. Next slide. We anchored our work in, as a fully integrated program, we anchored our work in literacy and the humanities. So we did a deep dive into immigration in the United States and Mexico, and focused our beginning work around understanding documentary on the documentary called Which Way Home, which documents adolescents traveling from South America and Mexico into the United States. Next slide. So one of the key concepts that we wanted folks to understand from this project that we thought was a takeaway was this idea of disciplinary learning, which I would say over the last 3 years we've really seen the value in and focused on. So for the documentary project, we embedded documentary filmmakers from Bloomington into our process from the very beginning. They did mini workshops with us. They listened to the students' pitches for their documentaries. They helped us along the way. They went on shoots with us. They helped us during the editing process. And even in some of the other design projects we did connected to this, we wanted professionals from the community of filmmaking and art working with our students. So disciplinary learning was huge for us. Next slide. So our students all went through a planning phase after we studied documentary for a few months and looked at multiple forms of documentary, micro documentary. Each student group developed a presentation that outlined what their problem was, the purpose. They had to do a synopsis of their documentary and why their topic was important. And as I mentioned earlier, they did a pitch to a panel of documentary filmmakers who not only gave them feedback, but also helped them throughout the process to hone their ideas and some more of the technical aspects of documentary filmmaking, which was critical for us. Next slide. So during production, we had 14 groups of students in the field nearly every day. We did this on a $500 budget. We're buying camera equipment. We borrowed cameras. We used iPhones. But students were out in the field every day working with their subjects. This is a shot of one of our camera people at a local climbing gym that has a youth program, youth outreach program. And this is one of our students on the right at our state house here in Indianapolis, setting up interviews. We had a couple interviews fail, cancel on a day, so she just started cold calling people, and we ended up with 3 interviews with state representatives. So they're in the field doing real work. It was really exciting. Next slide. So the editing process was probably some of the most intense work that we've done with kids. We did after school sessions 2 or 3 nights a week. We did some Saturday sessions as we got closer. The documentary filmmakers we worked with came to the school and worked with our students hands-on. We sent computers home with kids. It was the editing room floor in full motion. And kids definitely experienced an appropriate level. We tried to put them in safe situations where they feel adult level pressure. And right there with filmmakers talking to them about how, no, this is what it's like. This is what it looks like to be 48 hours from a deadline and pushing. So it was a very exciting time for them, those last 2 weeks of editing. They used all of the current software that documentary filmmakers are making. We tried to, again, in terms of disciplinary learning, put them right in the field. One of our documentary filmmakers teaches film at the university, and said that he showed our films to his class and talked to them about how they were shooting this on a $500 budget, and they rivaled some of his freshman level university documentaries. Next slide. So we also talk about pushing in design wherever we can. So as a couple of I'll say side, but they were very, they were engaging and important. Each film crew came up with their own identity, their own brand identity. We worked with graphic artists and graphic arts students from the university. This is a dad who is in studio art at the university. So they came up with sketches, they created their own logos, their own identities, and then we screen printed those on t-shirts that all the students wore to the documentary film festival night. So just an example of pushing in design. And next slide. Additionally, another piece we looked at was graphic art around movie posters. And we analyzed a bunch of different movie posters from documentaries. Students did critiques of them. They went through 3 phases of design, drafting, prototyping, and getting feedback from the rest of the school and from their documentary film mentors. And each student created their own individual documentary film poster for their movie. And then each team created one that were displayed the night of our documentary film festival. So these are examples of 2 of our documentaries: The American Breakup, which was around the political divide in Bloomington, and the other was highlighting a therapeutic writing clinic called PALS. Next slide. The kind of the big reveal for us was we booked the Downtown Historic Theater and did a public exhibition of all of our documentary films. We had 600 people in attendance, and it was just a special night. We rolled out the red carpet, literally, and the kids all presented their work. Their posters were on display. They did Q&As. The folks from the community who we highlighted in the documentaries were all present. It was just a really special night. And for us, that public exhibition is a big deal for students. They realized that the work they did was authentic. It wasn't just a simulation. These documentary films highlighted places like PALS, the local bookstore and comic stores who are struggling to stay open, local restaurants, the local animal shelter, food banks, community farms, the local drive-in, which every year struggles to keep its doors open with Netflix and Hulu. And it was just really special. Next slide. And that is it. I felt like I flew through that. I was committed to 9 minutes, but here's contact. We welcome questions even after this. Yeah, that's it.
Wonderful. Oh my gosh. Wonderful. Thank you all so much. We have a little bit of time left. And I wondered, and there's the Q&A session, which feel free to ask any questions. But one of the things that I noticed, and maybe some of our wonderful panelists can speak to, the importance of interdisciplinarity, if that makes sense. This notion of sort of de-siloing knowledge and de-siloing these, which at least in the U.S. Tends to be really discrete. Sort of, you do math in math, and music in music, and science in science. And I wondered if some of the panelists could speak, because I noticed that was a through line for so many of the work we're doing, you know, building drums, building music, building a variety of artifacts with a particular idea in mind.
Yeah, really, if I may, you know, this taking the artifacts as a starting point instead of the discipline. I strongly believe that that's the key to make a culture and make education work, and the key to what we're doing.
Yeah, I think I would connect with that in saying that we started with the idea of a documentary because we felt like it had many through lines, many entry points for other subjects. We believe in integrating, but not like forcing.
Right. Other thoughts?
Yeah, we also believe you can integrate interdisciplinary between school subjects, but we also have, we can make innovation in education in kind of a cultural intervention when we work together with artists and with young entrepreneurs and with people from the cultural sector, etc. And when you cooperate with them, interdisciplinary.
It's a mouthful. Yes.
We really discovered that we can invent new education. It is different than when you only think with teachers together. Then yeah, you only have a narrow group, and with almost you can escape from.
Awesome.
The reason that I ask is I have, and this is something that I think is interesting, is sometimes we tend to think about, for instance, science education or even art education, schools in formal and informal settings as being removed from the community, right? Where they take place. So we saw in the documentary that it was connected to the community. We saw, Dvir, you spoke of folks 10 minutes separated from each other, now coming together. They weren't they weren't in separate locations. They were in separate locations, but that act of creating, the act of making, that is indeed very enculturated or very encultured, can also be can be unifying, can bring us together if, I think, as Gabriel was talking about, we position the human, the person, the humanity as the driving factor to science, to the driving factor of making, and not have it be, I think, Peter, I think you said, it's not be goal oriented, but to be human oriented. Yeah. Just so wonderful. I wanted to wrap up. You all are doing just such incredible work. Thank you so much for all you do for your communities and for you, for the global community too. How wonderful. I long for the days when we can get back together and gather again. Somebody said, before COVID visited our community. And I love that, right? It's just like, okay, it's visiting, right? Visitors will be gone eventually, and we'll be able to get back together. So thank you all for everything that you do. I did want to remind you that there's a conclusion session at the end of this when we wrap up here, but thank you all so much for all the work that you do, for participating. A big round of applause for everyone. Just absolutely wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mike.
Wonderful.
Yes, thank you.
Mike, thank you, everyone.
Absolutely. Thank you all.